You walk into a pasteleria in Alfama, look up at the menu, and realize you can read it. Because Spanish and Portuguese share a common Vulgar Latin ancestor and centuries of geographic overlap, the core vocabulary is heavily shared. You see pastel de bacalhau or pan de centeo, and your brain seamlessly fills in the gaps. You confidently step up to the counter, place your order using your best Spanish approximation, and the woman behind the counter nods. You feel great. Then she replies. The words hit you like a compressed wall of sound. The vowels seem to vanish into the spaces between heavy consonants. You might catch a stray obrigada at the end, but the rest is a complete blur that sounds absolutely nothing like what was written on that menu. This interaction exposes the fluency illusion. For a Spanish speaker, the significant head start in reading creates a predictable auditory trap. You assume your reading comprehension translates to understanding speech. In Lisbon, it doesn't. On paper, the grammatical skeleton feels familiar. Subject-verb-object structures, article and adjective agreement, and the entire infinitive-verb system map over with very few adjustments. Even the division between permanent and temporary states, the rules governing the two verbs for to be, ser versus estar, transfer cleanly from Spanish to Portuguese. Because most prepositions, conjunctions, and high-frequency verbs are nearly identical, a fluent Spanish speaker can often decode a news article or a city sign without a dictionary. This shared foundation makes reaching B1 reading proficiency a matter of weeks rather than months. But relying on that visual advantage backfires. Mapping thousands of words strictly on paper wires your brain to expect familiar, distinctly Spanish audio patterns that do not exist on the streets of Portugal. Once you actually navigate these streets and have real conversations, the pleasant surprises turn into specific traps. Let's start with semantic false friends. If you see polvo on a Lisbon menu, you are ordering octopus, not dust. And if you need an eraser, you ask for a borracha, which a Spanish speaker might mistakenly interpret as a drunk woman. The most awkward social trap happens if you try to announce a pregnancy. In Spanish, you are embarazada. In Portuguese, the word is grávida. Saying you are embarazada in Portugal just means you are feeling a little flustered. Then you hit the structural shifts. In Spanish, object pronouns like me and te usually sit before the verb. European Portuguese pulls those pronouns to the back, attaching them after the verb with a hyphen. They also abandon the Spanish division of possession and auxiliary verbs. Instead of using haber for compound tenses and tener for possession, Portuguese relies entirely on a single verb, ter, to do both jobs. These structural shifts prove that guessing based on your Spanish instincts is not enough. To communicate clearly, the core logic of the language requires deliberate rewiring. This brings us to the primary phonetic hurdle for Spanish speakers, vowel reduction. In Spanish, every vowel in every syllable is pronounced fully and clearly. European Portuguese speech works differently. Unstressed vowels are reduced or swallowed completely. The word obrigado compresses down to something closer to brigado in fast speech. This is a uniquely European challenge. Brazilian Portuguese speakers open their vowels much more, creating a sound profile that Spanish speakers find much easier to track intuitively. Portugal also introduces nasal vowels. Sounds ending in ow or m require you to close the airflow at the back of your throat, a physical movement Spanish does not use. Until a Spanish speaker trains their ear to anticipate these missing and nasalized sounds, a working vocabulary of thousands of words remains useless in a real conversation. To break through this auditory ceiling, you have to accept a hard truth. If you keep prioritizing reading and textbook vocabulary, your conversational progress will stall. You need to invert standard language learning advice. Spend your first few weeks strictly listening to spoken European Portuguese. Don't read along. Don't try to translate. Just let your ear calibrate to the speed and the rhythm. This auditory immersion is the only way to pick up non-transferable local patterns, like how Lisboetas navigate the social register differences between the informal tu and the formal você in daily interactions. Closing the fluency gap requires moving past the comfort of Spanish text to internalize the rhythmic patterns of local Portuguese speech. The problem is that generic language apps and Brazilian-focused audio courses do not prepare Spanish speakers for the specific phonetic shifts found in European Portuguese. That is why we built Street Tongue. It is an app designed entirely around real city dialects like Lisboeta Portuguese to specifically calibrate your ear to localized slang, swallowed vowels, and authentic street pronunciation. Use the link on screen to download Street Tongue and close the listening gap before you travel. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what is the most embarrassing false friend mix-up or pronunciation trap you've fallen into while learning a new language?